Okay, so we saw that we're going to get something like this list of the entries, the logs of the entries. So suppose we want to see the number of people who entered in the 4-hour intervals. So we need to focus on an individual station to do this. The fourth column in the data is called the station. If we go back to the data, at least the first 24 of these rows all have the same station. It looks like almost everything we can see here anyway all has the same station code, the 59th Street station. So we're going to focus just on those first 24 rows. So we're going to stay with the same station. And also we said we're going to limit the number of pages to scrape to 1. And here this limits us, as we said, to the first 24 rows of the page that we're scraping. So the entrance number list may start out something like this. The first numeric entry, this is not numeric, but the first numeric entry is the log for 3 a.m. The second numeric entry is the log for 7 a.m. and so on. To know the number of people entering in that 4-hour period, we would subtract the 7 a.m. log minus the 3 a.m. log. So this minus that. Note that in math, subtracting two lists element-wise returns the difference between the elements at each index. For example, if you wanted to subtract this minus this, then we might subtract them element-wise, and we take 3 minus 1, that would give you 2. And then 2 minus this one, which is also 1, which give you 1, and so on. But in Python, to do this, we need a module called NumPy. Python itself won't sort of allow us to do this easily. So we're going to need to do an import NumPy, and we're going to give it the shortened name of NP, just so we don't have to write out NumPy all the time. We can just write out NP. So we're going to have an import NumPy statement here at the beginning of the rest of the code. And then we can do what we want to do like this. So the way that we have to do this is to subtract these two lists. We have to encase them in NP array and then put in the list, and the other one NP array and then put in the list, and then we'll get back basically what we want, which is, as we said, we wanted 210. We'll get back 210, but it'll be in a so-called array. So we'll get back actually this, which is nearly what we want. Then we can convert that back to a list like this. We just take this thing that we get back, and we use something called the toList method. Don't forget the MP at the beginning. So you have to have that there. You have to have the whole thing. Suppose we have a list that represents the number of people having gone into the subway at 3 a.m., 7 a.m., 11 a.m., etc. So we might call it the log, and it might be this. At 3 a.m., there were no people that had passed up until 3 a.m. By 7 a.m., the log was now 3. By 11 a.m., the log was now 8. By the next 3 p.m., the log was this, and so on. How many people went in between 3 and 7 a.m.? Obviously, 3, which is the 7 a.m., minus a 0, is that. How many people went in between 7 and 11? So that would be the 8 minus the 3, which is 5. What do we get if we subtract this minus this? So what did I do here? This is this part of the log, is this one here, starts at 3, goes to 30. And this one starts at 0 and only goes to 25, so that's this part of the log. So notice, first of all, that both of these have the same number of elements in them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 4, 5. And what happens if we subtract these element by element mathematically? So this isn't what happens in Python, but if we just did it mathematically, what would we get? We'd get 3 minus 0, we'd get 8 minus 3, we'd get 15 minus 8, that is, we get this one, 3 minus 0, 8 minus 3, and so on. We get these numbers, which is the number of people having gone in between 3 a.m., between 7 and 11 a.m., and so on. So this subtraction that we did, where we took we didn't include the first element here, and we didn't include the last element here, gives us exactly what we want, the number of people having gone in each time interval. How can we write what is on the left of the minus sign, and how can we write what is on the right of the minus sign? That is, how can we express this, and how can we express this? So if we think of them as lists, so if we call it log, then this one is missing the first element. How do we write that? We can write it like this, log from 1 to the end. Then how can we write the one on this one here? So that is log here to the length of the log. Remember, it doesn't include the last one. So if we write the length of the log, then it doesn't include the last one. So it only includes the 25th one. So we could write out what we want to do in Python as log this one, putting it in np.array minus np array of this one. Now up here we called it log, but in our code we called it entrance number. So we can do exactly the same thing, but replace log with entrance number. And so here we would have entrance number, and here we would have entrance number, and here we would have entrance number. So we have entrance number, and entrance number. And we'll call it how many entered per 4 hours. So we'll take what we have up here, and we'll set it equal to this. And that's what we have here. So now we have stored how many entered per 4 hours. And remember, it's going to look like this. So it's going to be an array. It's going to have the word array around it. We're going to have to do 2 lists to it to make it into just a regular list. So we're going to call it this. And then to convert it back to a list, we just use the toList method on it and reassign it to this. And now this is a list. Actually, however, this won't quite work, and that's because it works with the logs, but it won't work with entrance numbers, because the entrance numbers, if we look at them, are not actually numbers, they're strings. So the elements of the entrance number are actually strings. So this won't work. You can't put it into here and subtract it from here. It won't work. So the elements of the entrance number are actually strings, whereas the elements of the log are numbers. We can't really subtract strings from each other, not this way anyway. However, there is a method in NumPy called asTypeInt, which we can use on entrance numbers to convert its strings to numbers. So instead of doing it like this, what we can do is we can take this and we can convert it to an integer with this method. Okay, and then we can do the same thing with the second part, converting it to an integer like that. And now we're allowed to subtract them because they are numbers. So then we just change it to what we originally had, which was this. We just add in asTypeInt here, and we just add in asTypeInt here. So we get that, and we get that. And that will give us what we want, which is how many people go in at each time interval. So let's see what we have. And we just have implemented what we just set up there. We get this, and we can print out the list at the end. So let's take all of this code and put it in to here. Let's rerun it again from scratch. Rather, we'll just run. So first we get the same output as before, and then we get the actual number of people that went in each time interval. Okay, now we can make a graph of something like this. So let's just explore how to do that, and that will be the end of our scraping project. Okay, so let's just add in some graphics here. So I'm just going to this website here, and we're going to create an example like this, and an example like that, and an example like this one. So we have this already, and we are going to import NumPy. Well, we actually already did that, but just in case you're doing this from scratch. And then we need this matplot library. And then I'm going to take the times of the day. So I'm going to have an interval called 3 to 7 a.m. I guess that should be a.m. And this should also be a.m., 7 to 11 a.m., and so on. So I'm only going to plot the first from here. Actually, I think we said there were 24 entries, but I'm only going to plot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So I'm going to just plot from the beginning to the fourth, the one with the fourth index. So next we have to do this, and I'm just copying basically from that website. And then I'm going to plot the bars and create the names and show the graphic. Each time you have to do this. Each time you have to do this. And so we're going to do it all three ways. You can look at the code here, and let's test it out. So here it is. So we have all of that. So we're going to get three different versions. So let's try and run it. So here's the first version, shows the traffic in these time intervals. Then a horizontal version of it, and then this version of it. So obviously you can do much more than this, but this is just scratching the surface of how to scrape this website and then do a little bit of analysis and a little bit of visualization.